Howdy, pilgrims. Word is to come far. Wishi Katawi Nakuda Fanawa Udawa Tecumtha. The panther crossing the sky at night is coming to visit my brother's trade. Wishi Katawi Nakuda Fanawa Udawa. My name, as you know, is Simon Girty. My Seneca name, Kepakamin. Kepakamin, Wishi Kepakamin. It's Shawandase and Seneca combined. That means honest, straight, arrow, truthful. I was given that name when I lived for 7 years among the Seneca. Each of my brothers were adopted in different tribes. Each one of us learned the language of that tribe. I grew up outside a little fort called Herod's Fort in Pennsylvania. My father was an alcoholic. But never touch alcohol. Don't do it. It's bad medicine. Understand? One day at the trading post, my drunken father got into an argument with a Shawandase by the name of Fish. When I use the word Shawandase, that's a Shawnee term that means Shawnee. Shawandase. The fish killed him. There was a man in the community by the name of Turner, John Turner. He avenged the death of my father, and his reward was my mother. And out of that, we had a step brother by the name of John Turner. And we moved close to the Allegheny Mountains, close to what we call the Blue Ridge Line. And there was a fort there. We built a series of forts because after the defeat of, who was that general, that British general? Who was it? Thank you. General Braddock. Warned not to separate his army, warned by George Washington himself, don't separate the army. He did. Total defeat, over 1,000 men killed. But because of that, all hell broke out across the frontier. So they started to build a series of forts. And they built Fort Granville. It was at this fort that John Turner, my mother, and my brothers went to for protection. While we were there, the various tribes, especially the Seneca and some Ojibwa and Potawatomi, Saw, Fa, tricked us, and John Turner opened the gate. Well, the fort was taken. Some died. They burnt the fort down. My mother and my stepbrother John were taken by the Shawandase to a village called Chillicothe. There were 7 Chillicothes. The big one on the Miami Chillicothe was the one that a real good friend of mine, Simon Butler, stole those horses. Of course, paid for it in the end. I was taken by the Senecas of the great nation of the Iroquois, of the Finger Lakes, in the territory of New York. I learned the Seneca language. George learned the Fok and the Potawatomi language. My other brothers learned between Shawandase and Huron, but we all knew the various languages of our captivity. There came a time when the settlers at Fort Pitt and the army persuaded an exchange of captives. So my brothers, myself, my mother, and John Turner were exchanged at Fort Pitt. There at Fort Pitt, the military realized the wealth of knowledge that we had, of all the languages that we could speak. And they wanted to utilize that, you see, for their service. So how did I get here, and why did I switch sides? There was a general by the name of Hand, H-A-N-D. He was going to have an expedition, a military expedition, along the Allegheny River, and he was going to take on those savages. And he was going to defeat them because there were all sorts of villages in the uprising still from the defeat of the English there in 1755. But when he approached the village, all the warriors had left. Most of the men were out hunting, and only the women and the children were left in the village. But he went ahead, and I warned him, it's just women and children, but he attacked. How many times does that happen? He killed women and children. No reason, no purpose. I had it. The next day, 5 of us left Fort Pitt. We traversed across the Ohio wilderness, made our way to Fort Detroit, and we joined up with the British. But primarily, I joined up with the various tribes. The Huron, the Potawatomi, the Ojibwa, the Mohegan, the Miami. And there was a prophecy that just came true a few years ago. There would come to the Indian nation a leader that would draw all the tribes together and form a confederacy that would throw back the white, long-knife Chamonix back across the mountains of smoke. His name was Tecumseh. And he started his journey going from village to village. And you have to realize that a lot of these tribes hated one another. The Potawatomis hated the Ojibwa. The Ojibwa did not like the Muskingums. The Muskingums did not like the Tuscaroras. All the infighting constantly. But Tecumseh was trying to tell us, we are not the enemy. The enemy is the long knife, Chamonix, stinking people. That's the enemy. That's the enemy that takes our land, rapes our women, burns our village, destroys our crops, digs up our dead for gold and silver bracelets. That's the enemy. Not we as tribes. So I started to follow Tecumseh. My brother was very busy at St.Mary's, at the trading post. Tremendous business, right on some of the main trails. But I can remember the first time I heard Tecumseh speak. There was a time when I was small, my father talked about the bison by the millions in the upper Sandusky Plains. And how every year the bison would take a trip from the upper Sandusky down and cross the Spratley-Weequahic, which the white people call incorrectly the Ohio. And then they would traverse into Kentucky, the sacred hunting ground of all the nations of the Northwest Territory. And there the bluegrass of Kentucky and the salt licks that they loved, they would gather. I remember on a long hunt with my friend Simon Kenton. Maybe you know him as Simon Butler. We were coming up to Upper Sandusky to the Delaware village. Here they come. 3 herds of bison. The ground trembled. The trees shook. We looked around and we saw our tree and we made for that tree. For 3 days we were in that tree. 3 days it took for those herds to leave. And now, 1800, there's not one bison left in the Ohio lands. Why? Because of the Long Knife Chamonix stinking people. Because they kill a buffalo just for the tongue. And they leave the carcass to rot. They do it with deer, elk, moose, beaver. Do you understand the Chamonix? Because we do, and who they are. Why, they can't even keep their treaties. The Long Knife Chamonix speaks with a forked tongue like a snake. They can't even keep the Greenville Treaty that was set up for the protection of the tribes in this area. And what happened? They invaded. They dug up the graves of our ancestors. They rape our women. They burn the villages. They pillage. They burn the grasses. And then they complain about how all the topsoil runs down the rivers. They are stupid people. Our only hope is to comfort, to push them back. Tecumseh has given us 2 signs. There will come a time in the future, I don't know when he said Tippecanoe, which is a village that he has set up, he will stomp his feet 3 times. That will be the signal to Mother Nature, and the earth will quake and shake, and the trees will sway back and forth, and the Spratley-Weethiopah, the Ohio, will turn its course and go backwards. And where there were lakes that disappear into the ground, and where there were no lakes, lakes will appear. And the Long Knife Chamonix will feel the thunder as the ground shakes all the way to their little village of New York. And many of their cabins will fall. I look forward to that day of the shaking of the ground. And when we all hear that, the various tribes, we are to gather at Tippecanoe, and there we will renew our strength, 15,000 strong. William Henry Harrison will be scared. He'll pull his dress up and wet his pants, and he'll run through the woods screaming like a girl. That's how the Long Knife Chamonix fight. They're cowards. William Henry Harrison speaks like a snake. Never believe him. Do you understand? Never believe him. For that matter, never believe any white man. That's right. He's shocked. Right now, my brothers have a thriving business here at St. Mary's. Do I trust you with my rifle? Sure. The thriving business here at St. Mary's Trading Post is this right here. Prime pelts What I have here is what we call a bundle, number one. A variety of pelts. I'm not going to ask you to identify them because probably most of you have no idea. This is worth $5. In some places, $6 worth of supplies. $1, one deer, $1. This can buy you this. The various tribes come to St. Mary's and they bring this. My brothers take this and head down to Marie Antoinette's town. Do you know where Marie Antoinette's town is? Anybody know? Marietta. It's on the Muskingum that empties into the Spratley Weekly Pot. There, they trade the pelts. It's almost like you're taxed and then you're taxed again and you're taxed again.
Some things never change.
Never change. They take the pelts, especially the beaver. And who likes beaver pelts? The Brits and the French. Right now, and I don't have any, but I should. One beaver pelt by this. One beaver, prime. St. Mary's River has lots of beaver. Have you noticed the bear in the area? The brown bear, the black bear, everywhere. Otters in the St. Mary's River? Otters? Have you seen the moose? Have you seen the elk? Have you seen the deer? Have you seen the wild turkey? Well, you better enjoy it because they're going to disappear. Because the long-nosed Chamonix will overhunt and kill them. And they'll kill a deer or a buffalo for just the tongue and leave the carcass to rot. Who's the savage? The long-nosed Chamonix or the various tribes? I don't really have too much to say about Reverend David Zeisberger or John Heckwelder. They've done a great thing on the Muskingum, and I've been there, and they have established the 4 cities of light: Schonenbrunn, New Salem, Lynchna, and they do a good thing for the Delaware tribes. But Reverend David Zeisberger called me a devil from hell. Do I look like I'm a devil from hell? Don't answer that. And do you know why Reverend David Zeisberger does not like me? He doesn't like me because I have taken a stand with Tecumseh and bringing the assembly of the various tribes together to form one Indian nation. I remember Tecumseh would take one stick. He would take that one stick and break it over his knee because it's weak. Then he would take 2 sticks, and you can break 2 sticks over your knee, and 3 sticks, but you get a bundle of sticks, and you can no longer break them, and you double that bundle, and you double it again. You can't even barge that bundle. That is what Tecumseh wants with the Indians, bringing them together. We will be strong together. We are weak separate. And we can no longer fight among ourselves. Somebody said, Girty, you're the scourge of the frontier. John Heckwelder said that. He's a missionary along with David Zeisberger. Well, what have I done wrong? I paid all my debts. I never scalped anyone. I saved 21 from burning at the stake, and we'll talk about the unfortunate one. And yet they call me the savage. Unfortunately, my real good friend, Colonel